Welcome everyone to the last new features update webinar for 2019. My name is Anthony Fernandez, and we'll be going through features and I guess improvements that were made as part of our November releases. In particular, we'll be focusing on the release done on the 26th of November. We've got an update coming out later this week as well, so stay tuned for that. If you have any questions at any point, just use the Q&A window to type in your questions. I've got a few colleagues signed into today's webinar who will answer those questions as I go through. Just in terms of viewing previously recorded webinars, you can do that via the community. Just search for Simple Fund 360 webinars, and you'd be able to access those previous webinars for the last 12 months and even prior, if that's something you wish to do. Okay, and also with registering for future webinars, that can be done via our website. It'll be in the events tab on our website. It's not, the 2020 webinars haven't been registered as yet. So stay tuned and register for those as they come through. So that's where you would do it, through the website. Okay, so let's jump straight in. Some of the main features that we introduced as part of the last month were, the first two are essentially to do with our mobile app. So BGL Engage, it's now available on Android and can be downloaded on the Google Play Store. We did have the iPhone app come out in October, so that for those iPhone users, or for those of your trustees who are iPhone users, they can download it from the Apple App Store as well. And just with this time-weighted rate of return calc, so this is in terms of, I guess, your investment performance or return on investment, where you have contributions added during the year. It gives you a better representation of your return of investment. Now, this is only available on our mobile app at the moment. It's something that we'll look at bringing into the software later on, but at the moment it's currently just on the mobile app. For those of you that want to have a look at the calculation or what sort of calculation is happening in the background, the formula for it is available on our help. Just type time-weighted rate of return, and it will bring you to this page, which will take you through the whole calc and what and how we do calculate those numbers. So like I said, that's all sort of on the mobile app for you. One of the features we introduced as part of, I guess, the 26th release is the property dashboard. Now this is available, let me jump into Simple Fund. So in Simple Fund, if you go into investments, you do have property dashboard as a new tab that you could open up. The first time you go into the screen, it should bring through all the properties. So that's your Australian and overseas residential and non-residential properties automatically onto the screen. If it hasn't come through for any reason, you could go in here on the right-hand side and select add existing property and just follow the prompts to bring through any properties that weren't automatically brought through. One thing you'd notice the first time you go in, or sorry, once you've got an address selected, the first time you go in, it will highlight your first property along with, I guess, the latest valuation amount and date. However, the first time you go in, it may not have an address selected. So what you need to do is highlight the particular record and click edit. And it's just a matter of entering that address of the property. Let me come back in. The Google address search should work. Just bear with me for a second. There we go. So it's just a matter of selecting the address. Just in terms of this purchase price and contract date, this actually comes through from your transaction screen. So once you do the purchase transaction, the purchase amount and the date of the transaction will automatically feed through. You can enter the deposit amount manually in here just for record keeping purposes, and also indicate as to whether it's a GST registered I guess property or not. It should come through automatically, or it will come through automatically from the fund details, but just double check, make sure that it all lines up as well. Once you do save those changes, as you can see, it'll highlight based on the property that you're selected as to, like I said, the latest valuation and date. To add valuation, so you could still, if you want to still do it through the security screen, that's still possible. We haven't stopped any of that functionality. You can still create the property via the chart as well, but this is what we really want to focus you on, is this property dashboard, because it's one-stop shop for the maintenance of I guess all the properties in that fund. The plan is to make it a global sort of dashboard as well, to give a sort of toggle between fund and I guess to your firm view as well. I know one of the questions that will come through is, do we have the automated RP data or core logic integration? Not as yet. That's something that we will get done in the new year. But we do have the link, which still takes you to the RP data website or core logic website, where the valuation still comes through via your email, that you can then essentially add here. So for example, if I was to edit this valuation, you can actually now attach that valuation document to the valuation itself. So you can actually have all that stored in the one location. It will also go into the it'll be uploaded to our document screen, which if you've looked at the BGL work papers or the accounting work papers feature that was released, the plan is to get that to then feed into the work papers as well. So definitely something to have a look at and encourage to start using instead of the old school chart and security screen. In fact, when you go into the transaction screen, just open that on a separate tab. You now have the option of property as a drop-down sort of selection. So previously you had to go through investments, which takes you to the chart, but clicking on property will essentially bring you to the dashboard where you can then set up that property prior to continuing with entering the transaction. So yeah, so like I said, purchase price, contract date, very important. To add a new property, that's essentially all you need, an address. It'll automatically give you a security code. You just need to indicate whether it's an Australian or overseas property, residential or commercial. That's all the information you need to set up the account. So this will essentially create it for you and add it to the list. It's as simple as that. It's as you saw, just a couple of clicks and you've set up the property. You don't have to go through the whole deal of creating the chart, security, and I guess reduces steps and makes the setup much more simpler. We've also given you the ability to view rental statements for any of those properties through the screen as well. So this is essentially the rental statements that you have accessible on the report screen. So we've just brought it into this property dashboard for you to make it simpler. And yeah, that's essentially the long and short of it for the moment. Like I said, it's still phase one of this dashboard of this project. And like I said, the plan is to have the core logic integration happening along with making it a multi-fund screen as well, or to give you a toggle to switch between fund and firm. Okay, so the next thing is we've added a couple of brokers as well, which is Veritas Securities Limited and Bailey Roberts Group. For a full list of all the brokers that we support via our contract note service, again, it's available on our help. Just go to supported brokers or search for supported brokers, and it should give you the full list that we support. So as you can see, we've got 146 at the moment that we do support, and that would be the place you'd look for any broker that you're looking for via the contract notes service. Okay, so we've done some changes pertaining to the LRBA changes that came through. So this was in October. So this were the legislation changes that were brought through, which applies to the 2019 financial year as well. And the change is essentially to calculate the outstanding LRBA amounts attributable to each member for total super balance purposes. Now, there are a couple of scenarios where this apply. Let me actually just click into this. So there's a help file which actually takes you through the detail of when it actually does apply. So if you have an LRBA that was entered into after 1 July 18, refinanced, and the refinanced amount increased on 1 July 2018, or where it was refinanced to acquire a different asset on or after 1 July 2018. So the calculation we've automated via Simple Fund 360. There is, however, because we can't determine this for you, you actually need to go trigger the calc via the chart. So what you're looking for is the actual LRBA account. So let me go into the chart. So for this particular property or LRB, I've got it set up under 814, but in your case, most likely it'll be 855. But essentially what you need to do is in the chart more details, you're looking for this checkbox here. So if you trigger this checkbox and there's an LRBA, we will on create entries, run the calc to attribute part of the LRBA or the proportion of that LRBA to the specific members. Okay, so if I go into the tax return screen, what you will notice is after you've created entries, let me quickly create entries for this fund. Jump into tax compliance. What you will notice is it will calculate an amount at label Y for that, for the relevant members. The entire breakdown of the calc is available for you via the create entries report. So if you go to the last page of the create entries report, it will actually give you the details of the calc as well, the breakdown or the formula. So that's where you'd go to check your numbers. The formula is also available here as to what the formula we use as part of the calc. So it's on that help file there. What we also do is because I said it counts as part of your total super balance, in the transfer balance dashboard, what you will realize is once you've created entries, it'll add that to that member's total super balance. So that all happens. In order for all that to happen, what you need to do is trigger the checkbox in the chart for the LRBA account, and create entries will do the rest. So all we need to know is, does that particular LRBA trigger the attribution calc? That's all the software needs to be notified of. Create entries does the rest. Just with accounting work papers, like I said, we released that from beta to all clients, or took it out of beta and released it to all clients in last month. And we did run a specific webinar just on work papers, so I'm not going to spend time going through the whole work paper process. Again, if you come into our help, look for work papers, there's a 1-hour webinar specifically dedicated for this feature. So just click on that link there, which will take you to our YouTube channel, where you can sort of have a look at that particular feature at your own pace. So definitely worth having a look. It was a few months in the making, so definitely have a look. A lot of those who actually sat in for the work papers webinar gave some good feedback for us as well in terms of improvements. So definitely have a look and use the feedback button to give us feedback on how to improve it further. All right, so let's move on to improvements. The first one is registry data. You can now reconcile exchange traded fund balances as well via our registry data service. Essentially, the setup is the same. You do it via Connect, manage data feeds, share data pack, and set up registry data. It's a matter of entering a HIN or SRN along with the postcode. And yeah, so this is the one that I've got on this particular fund. I've got an ETF here for Robo. And as long as it's got a HIN, the quarterly data will come through. So where you can see all this is investments, balance review. And what you will notice is you'll have the ETF balances come through via the relevant registry. Okay, the next one is an improvement that we did to the reports functionality. This was, again, highly wishlisted in terms of, it's to do with the reporting or date documents, I guess, selection in the badges. So just to quickly demo that for you, in the badge, you have this selection for date documents. When it's selected as yes, we actually slap a date on, which you can change or control via the settings screen for each of the reports, or you could use the, let me just jump into reports, it'll be easier. So either via common settings or individual report settings, you were able to control the date. But in a scenario where you have date documents as no, what we now do is we give you the placeholders for the date for essentially every report that has a date. It wasn't consistent previously, or the 2 slashes didn't have enough space for a date to be entered. It wasn't really user-friendly. So that has been improved. So there are different sort of varieties of dates that we add or record on these reports. And just to give you an example, it may show like this. And yeah, so essentially we've spent some time to make sure that a date can actually be entered within those fields. And we've gone through every single report to make sure that when date documents is set to no, that there's a consistency across all those reports. So this is just 3 reports, for example, that I picked up, just to show you how the placeholders will sit for where you've got date documents set to no. The next one is in terms of, I guess, a T-bar. On the T-bar dashboard, again, this was requested. We have added an LRBA alert. So this is where you've got an LRBA, and certain LRBAs have scenarios where you need to actually report a credit to the tax office. And I've given you the ATO. So if you actually go into the ATO website, it gives you as to what scenario potentially needs to be recorded as or reported in terms of a movement to a member's T-bar account. Now, again, we cannot automate that for you because there are certain, I guess, scenarios that need to be satisfied in order for that credit to be reported. So just have a read of what there and see if your clients are affected by it. All we essentially give you on the T-bar or the transfer balance dashboard is essentially this warning here. It's identifying that in this fund you have an LRBA and there could be a potential event that needs to be reported. So click on that link, which takes you to this ATO help file as well. So that was added just to give you a heads up, but doesn't mean that there is always going to be a credit, because like I said, it needs to be from 2017 onwards, from 1 July 2017. So that's likely, so that just be mindful of those dates as well. In terms of the previous, what I showed you, where you need to report the LRBA in the tax return, that applies from 1 July 18. In terms of T-bar reporting, it's 1 July 17. So just be mindful of that little inconsistency there in terms of sort of years. It's 17 for T-bar reporting, but 18 for tax return reporting. What we've also done is we've automated 13 new corporate actions. I'm not going to go through every single corporate action that was automated. It's available on our release notes. So again, this is on the community. If you go to our new features, release notes, under item number 6, the 13 that were added are on that list. So if you're waiting on certain corporate action to be sort of automated by us, just make sure, have a check, see if it's on the list. If there's one that has come through that we haven't added, again, use the feedback button, let us know. We will get to it as soon as possible. We've done a slight change to the migration utility. So this is when you're migrating funds up from Simple Fund Desktop to Simple Fund 360. It's essentially a security enhancement, which now uses, instead of, what was it? Instead of, it still uses username, but instead of short name and password, it'll be username and a token. For the full instructions, if you're looking at migrating a fund, just have a read of the instructions on the help file. It has been updated to, I guess, our new process. So just ensure that you're following the instructions here. Just again, search for this in the help. The article will come up and just follow the instructions here. Like I said, it has slightly changed to not include short name and password, and instead username and token. Outside of that, the rest of the process stays the same, just a slight security enhancement that was added. That brings us to a final improvement. This was actually not on the release notes simply because it's in beta. So I thought I'll show you guys in the webinar as to what this is. It's a new tool that we're trialing out in terms of report customization. In the report screen, so for example, investment income report, this is the only report, by the way, that we've customized for you. So that's why we haven't really noted this on the release notes. In settings, you now have this use customized report option. If you select it as no, or by default it's no, If you select it as yes, it'll then use our customized report functionality. So if you say no, it's like nothing's changed. It'll just print the current investment income report as it did prior to the previous release. However, if you go yes and click on the customized report beta under options, it will open up this little customized report view of that particular investment income report. Now, things you can change in here, first thing is font. So you can actually move the size of the fund name font, report name font, date, header font. So you can customize the various sizing of those fonts for the various parts of the report. So again, play around with it and go with changing the font sizes if that's something that you're looking at doing. What you can also do is you can switch off columns. So for example, let's say you this particular fund didn't have any distributions. It just has a straight bank account, it has a property, and that's it. Let's just say, for example, which means you don't need all these other columns to show. So you can actually switch columns off. What you can also do is you can move columns around. If you think the order should be different to what we are giving you, you can actually switch those columns or move them around. Further down, the footnote. If you don't want the footnote to display, switch it off. What we can also do with this tool is we can add graphs of, I guess, essentially the data that is displayed. So we've actually added a couple of graphs that we thought would be of value. So it'll show you for, I guess, for the various investment categories as to what income it's received. Again, if you don't like the graphs, switch it off or leave it on if that's something you want to provide to your clients. If you do make a mistake, you can always reset it back to the original settings. But if you do make any changes, just be mindful to save whatever changes that you made, and it will print as part of the report pack that you're generating. So that wouldn't be an issue. That will still come through. So yeah, just have a play with that. Give us some feedback, very important. Keep that feedback coming. The reason I want to just have it for a closed number of participants, which I thought the webinar would be the best avenue for it, is because we want to keep the sort of beta clients limited as well, because we didn't want too much feedback as well to begin with, because we just tried it out on one report and essentially just want to see if this is something worth pursuing or essentially let clients decide was thinking. So yeah, definitely have a play around with it. It's just the investment income report, as I mentioned. Yeah, so before we start extending it to other reports, just want to make sure that the concept is something that you guys will look at, I guess, taking up. That's essentially all the features and enhancements that we introduced for the month of November. What's coming up? So for 2020, things to look forward to. We're adding a new reversionary pension wizard to the member screen to better deal with reversionary pensions. We're adding that feed management screen to better sort of manage all your feeds in terms of banks, share data, and wraps. So it'll be one screen where you can manage all that. With the ATO moving to this MyGov ID, we need to update our lodgement system to now work via the MyGov credentials and not OSKey. So we need to do that change early next year before March. So that will be coming up. We're looking at introducing digital signing and partnering up with DocuSign. So that's currently available on our corporate compliance package. We'll be looking at implementing it again, just for a few reports to start with, to the financial reports. And we'll see how the take-up is. And if that's something, again, clients want to pursue. And if that's the case, we will extend it to other reports as those requests come through. So something to look forward to, again, first quarter of 2020. We're looking at also adding the feed for Evans and Partners. Again, this is highly requested, has come through on our feedback a few times. So that's something the guys are working on. Hopefully first quarter again of 2020. And another one that's high on the wish list is the 45-day rule. So that will be added to the investment income report. And yeah, so something to look forward to again as part of the first quarter of 2020. That essentially brings us to an end of November features.